listeners and readers of AwardsWatch.com. This is the Awards Watch Podcast, episode 190. I'm your executive editor, Ryan McQuade, joined today by Josh Parham.
Hello, hello.
And Zach Laws.
Hello, everyone.
We are here to talk about Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. Well, we've seen the film. We're unlike people at the box office. We've actually seen it, and we're going to talk about it. And then we're going to talk about our favorites so far of 2023. First up, I just wanted to talk about a little bit of news this week. Some first film festival 2023 news. And that is that we have our first film announced for the 2023 Toronto International Film Festival. And it's the little movie that's been delayed 900 times. It's Next Goal Wins, from Academy Award winner Taika Waititi, starring Michael Fassbender. Any shock at all here, guys, that this was one on the slate? No, right?
Absolutely not surprising at all. Like, it was absolutely going to play there.
Yeah, didn't Jojo Rabbit premiere at Toronto? If I'm not
I believe
mistaken?
so. Yeah, I think it won the audience prize,
which was like back when this movie was first shot, wasn't it?
It's been delayed at least 3 years. I know that it's been, it'll be really interesting to see when it comes out, because, we're living in a post Ted Lasso world, and this movie has very big Ted Lasso vibes surrounding it. And so, but it'll be nice to see Fassbender. He's going to be a busy boy. He's got this and The Killer from David Fincher this year. Josh, yeah, which one?
I just said he's back. Michael,
he's back. Yeah, he's been gone for a long time. Yeah. Josh, Taika Waititi, your favorite director, right?
Yeah. I mean, I do not hate him as much as some other people do, but I am getting rather tired of
fatigued.
him. Yes, I think fatigued is the perfect word for it. He can be very good and very funny, but his shtick can get very grating quickly, and we are kind of approaching that point. So can't say that I am like heavily anticipating this new movie, but yeah, Michael Fassbender's back. I am interested in it, but with some reservations.
Yeah, can't wait to see Will Arnett play that role that Armie Hammer was supposed to play.
Yeah, the reason for one of the delays of this movie.
Yeah, I guess audience will eat it up later this year.
Hey,
when it comes out. Speaking of things they're not eating up, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. It made, I guess it made about $60 million domestically is what they're being reported.
Yeah, I think I heard 130 worldwide.
130 worldwide on a $295 million budget.
Yeah, so basically $300 million they spent.
Yeah,
on that
$300 million, 190. Most of that's probably got to do with the de-aging technology that goes into
which money well spent there, guys.
Yeah. I'm sure we'll talk about that here. I've got some thoughts on that. But of course, it's an Indiana Jones movie. He's 80 years old. They're going for a Dial of Destiny. It's all in the title. Don't really have to explain it. It's got Harrison Ford, Phoebe Waller-Bridge, Matt Mikkelsen. It's got Antonio Banderas for like 5 seconds. It's the last ride of Indy. This movie came out at Cannes. It got a good review from at least our critic Ben Rolph on the website, but it got middling reviews out of Cannes. It's kind of gone back up. It's hit close to about 70%. If you round up on Rotten Tomatoes, and the audience scores have been in like the 80s with like a B+ rating cinema score. So it's been kind of in the middle. I think it'll probably do okay, it'll internationally and everything wise, and it'll probably just break even on budget. It looks like it will lose some money for Disney. But Josh, I got to ask you, I actually don't know if you have any affection for the Indiana Jones franchise. And what's your favorite or least favorite of the franchise so far, and what your thoughts are on the Dial of Destiny? I actually haven't looked at any reviews of anyone here to know if you like it or not.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think like most people, I would consider myself a fan of Indiana Jones. I grew up watching those movies. I actually have very vivid memories of Raiders of the Lost Ark and watching the scene at the end when all the Nazis explode and melt over and over again, because I was a sick child apparently. So I do like those movies quite a deal. Kingdom of the Crystal skull kind of, we forget that sort of happened. So I don't really consider it in my mind that much. But yeah, I do like those movies overall. And going into this one, I was hopeful that it would be good. I like James Mangold, and Harrison Ford seems to have passion for this project. And I just sort of felt like it was okay. It wasn't bad, and I think overall I had like a decent time with it.
Mm-hmm.
There are some entertaining moments in it, and I was somewhat engaged, but there was something about it that felt kind of removed in terms of more momentum within the story, I felt. And a lot of the action just sort of felt like it was doing things because we just sort of need an action sequence here, and it felt rather obligatory, and I didn't really feel like I was that invested in the overall narrative. Yeah, it was, like I said, it's not bad, and I did think it was somewhat entertaining, but overall I just didn't really find myself connecting to it that much, apart from Phoebe Waller-Bridge, who I think is excellent in the movie. Really loved her energy, her screen persona, absolutely great. But that was like the only thing that I thought was exceptional. Everything else was just, it was passable, it was fine, but you do sort of want more from an Indiana Jones movie, and I didn't really get that here.
Also really long. It's like the longest Indiana Jones film, I believe,
Yeah,
if I'm not mistaken. And it felt that way. It was like 2.5 hours long, a little over 2.5 hours long.
yeah, I think it's like just a hair over.
Yeah. Zach Laws,
Yes,
some would call you the Indiana Jones of this podcast.
in a bit. Yes,
Yeah.
in a way of speaking.
Those dashing good looks.
Yeah,
So
thank you.
I'm curious, same questions to you, your love or attachment to the franchise and what you thought of the last version of Indiana Jones with Harrison Ford.
Yes. So I, as a child of the 90s, I was born right after Last Crusade came out. I was born in 1989 in the fall. So like the supposed ending of Indiana Jones came as I was born. So I guess that's kind of the mythical powers of that is what made me a bit like the Indiana Jones of this podcast. They just transferred over to me, I guess you could say. I don't know what kind of woo-woo I'm talking about here, but I remember when they came out on DVD for the first time. I was first getting into movies, and so I bought that up as like, okay, these are important films that I need to see. And much like the original Star Wars trilogy and Jaws and E.T., all the movies like that, they were a big part of my growing up. And I've seen them in theaters actually a couple of times, which has been really cool. And I would highly recommend if they're ever playing nearby you, check them out because they're a lot of fun to watch with an audience. And I'm a bit of a Crystal Skull apologist as well. I don't think that movie is as bad as people say it is. And I also kind of think that it said everything that was said in this most recent film. Like a lot of the points that were made about letting go of the past and the fallacy of going out for one last adventure and even seeding to the next generation. I think Crystal Skull said that already, and in a little bit of a better way. I think that this film always had a kind of disadvantage that it was working with because James Mangold is not Steven Spielberg, God bless him, and I don't mean that as a knock against the man, who I really admire and I think is a very talented director. It's just like saying that somebody is not Steven Spielberg is like saying that this composer is not Mozart or this playwright is not Shakespeare, right? I mean, you're talking about like one of the most naturally gifted filmmakers who ever lived. I just yesterday went and saw a 4th of July screening of Jaws, which he made when he was younger than I am right now. And you would not, all of the production problems that famously happened with that movie, you would not know it by just how perfect that film is, right? And this is the guy who made Raiders of the Lost Ark, one of the greatest films of all time. one of the most iconic, beloved films ever, and then made the next three, which at least two of those, I guess maybe one of them, Last Crusade, is beloved. Temple of Doom has its defenders and detractors. And the same with Crystal Skull. So you're already going in there, I think, with one arm tied behind your back if you're a director who's taking over this franchise and trying to give it this big emotional send-off. I will give credit to Mangold that, you know, he does come up with some inventive set pieces. You could argue that maybe there's too many of them because this movie is too long, and gets kind of repetitive the longer it goes on, and starts to bleed together a little bit as it becomes an international mystery. But I will say that I was engaged throughout it. You know, I don't think it's a great movie. I think it's a fine film. But I do think that maybe it's not the disaster that I think the Cannes reception would lead people to believe, you know.
I think that for me, this movie, it goes back to this movie is way too long. Indiana Jones movies are 2 hours long. We talked about this with Wes Anderson. He has this sweet spot of an hour and 45. You get in, you get out, and you don't have to think, man, I spent way too long in that movie. That was a long exercise of seeing the same sort of shots and the type of characters and all these things for 2.5 hours long. If Wes Anderson announced he was doing a 2.5 hour movie, I think we'd all be a little worried because that's a little bit of a sensory overload. And I think that is the case here. It's really interesting what you're talking about there, Zach, because when Kingdom of the Crystal Skull came out, it was like 20 years after The Last Crusade. And what I think is so crazy about that is that movie, I think it was summer 2007, 2008, right?
2008, yeah.
2008.
Yeah. That movie made $123 million in the United States alone. We're talking about worldwide, this made 130 this weekend. People didn't care. They really didn't care. And I also think, too, Indiana Jones is a kickoff the summer. And that movie kicked off its summer. The Dark Knight and Iron Man were later. Indiana Jones, I believe, was more towards the beginning, was more of a May release, if I'm not mistaken.
I think it was like Memorial Day.
Was it like Memorial Day? Okay.
Yeah.
Which honestly is good for it, right? Because then when there's other movies that people want to see and other franchises, you know, people want to go and see that. And I think also, too, you look at what happened with The Flash and what's happened with this movie. Audiences are literally telling studios right now in the middle of a writer's strike and potentially a SAG strike in 2 weeks that going forward, there are franchises we love and we might be getting a little bit tired of the nostalgia. We might be getting a little bit tired of the same old shtick. And I think when you tell audiences Steven Spielberg isn't going to be behind it, which Steven Spielberg himself is not as bankable of a box office name as he used to be. Look at his last couple of films. They haven't done particularly well, but he's also gone away from doing the big action spectacles like Indiana Jones. He didn't even want to make Kingdom of the Crystal Skull because he felt like what you were saying, Zach, that movie was Last Crusade was done. They literally have a ride-off in the sunset to end that movie. It's a perfect trilogy for some people. I'm not the biggest Temple of Doom fan, but it's not the worst thing I've ever seen in my life. It's just not my favorite of Raiders of the Lost Ark, which I consider to be the greatest action movie of all time. Mm-hmm. And The Last Crusade, which I think is a perfect sequel. And a lot of that has to do because of Harrison Ford and Sean Connery's chemistry in that movie. It's so damn good. And Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, it's not a bad movie. I think we should have kind of seen with Crystal Skull what we've seen with Star Wars over the last 10 years, which is this preciousness that has been held onto a property that then becomes divisive. What Kingdom of the Crystal Skull has done is it turned this property into like this divisive machine where, you know, that movie's so weird and out there, yet Nazis melting their face off because you open the Ark of the Covenant, or drinking the wrong chalice, or Indy's heart getting ripped out is not weird. It's not crazy. Though those are grounded in reality as compared to the things in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Like, come on.
You know what I bet, though? I bet if the aliens were practical and not CGI, people would react differently.
That's fair. That is fair. But I think also that was more of a George Lucas wanted to do those. And so this feels like Harrison Ford's getting older, and we've tapped into Han Solo. We've tapped into Deckard with Blade Runner 2049. What's the last character we can milk the cow for? Oh, that's right. Indiana Jones, his favorite. And he's not going to say no to it because he loves Indiana Jones. And this movie, all the press has been Harrison Ford wanted to dabble into what it would be like for Indiana Jones to be 80 years old. The first 20 minutes of this movie is him in de-aging. And throughout the film, he's in de-aging to be back to the same age he was during Raiders of the Lost Ark. And it's baffling how long those sequences are. The CGI on the chasing sequences alone are bad. I mean, I've seen Mission Impossible. Zach's seen Mission Impossible. There's a lot of similar beats that we'll talk about in the next couple weeks when you talk about that movie. But that movie's long because those are always long and they're complicated, and those set pieces are done mostly practical, even though there's a little bit more CGI in that movie. And there's a lot of CGI in this movie, and you can tell it's on the budget, and some of it does not look good. And if we thought The Irishman looked bad, when like De Niro's beating up that guy that owns the deli store. Yeah. Him running on the train looked awful. Like it looked really bad. Like when he's running on top of the train in the opening sequence, it's like, and the fact that his voice is Harrison Ford's voice now.
That's a big giveaway.
As opposed to it being like, taking his voice, because they have the technology to change the voice, and it just sounds like an 80-year-old doing a 45-year-old's CGI work, and it's bad.
It was not good. And they first introduced the de-aged face like in full light. Like they shine a light on it, and you can immediately tell that it doesn't look good. And then the rest of the sequences that you see him, it is so dimly lit that you can't see anything, because now they're trying to hide it. It's like, why did you show us the full face in direct light right up front? It was bizarre.
Now,
I think it.
Oh yeah, go Zach. Sorry.
So you know what I think it is, and like anybody who knows me knows that I'm the biggest Irishman defender in the world. Right. So, except for maybe, Ryan and, a couple of other people. But I think that there's a difference between the way that they use de-aging in The Irishman and the way they use it in this Indiana Jones movie. We know what young Robert De Niro looks like because he was on film, right? There's not an attempt to make Robert De Niro in The Irishman look like Robert De Niro looked in Taxi Driver or Godfather 2 or Mean Streets, right? They make him the way it's hard to describe, but essentially they make him look almost like a different version of Robert De Niro. You know what I mean? Like,
they almost make him look like just a younger version of what he looks like now,
exactly,
as opposed to what he used to be, which is a very good-looking, skinny guy. They make him. They just basically take his wrinkles off.
Yes, and
it make him look worse as he gets into like the makeup. When he's in like the nursing home at the end.
Exactly, and with Ford, from what I understand, they were using a lot of footage from Raiders.
Yeah.
And that original trilogy as a guide to make him look as close to his original self as possible.
Yeah.
And I think there's a bit of uncanny valley with that, like, because we know exactly what Harrison Ford looks like at that age as this character.
Mm-hmm.
Our brains are kind of short-circuiting a little bit as we watch this, because we're like, this doesn't feel right. You know what I mean?
Well, I wonder if the route should have been just not having him be in it and him just come save the day, use nameless body double, and not and that would have cut your budget, because the budget on this movie is mostly because of that technology. I mean, The Irishman is the same way. That budget is greatly more than what it probably is because of that technology. And I don't want to dwell too much on the technology of it, because it is still a short amount of time in the film, but it was used a lot in the marketing for this movie. And I think people are just tired of seeing it like that. Just tell a story. And if you take the de-aging stuff out of this movie, it's a 2-hour movie. It's a roughly 2-hour movie. That opening sequence disappears. And maybe it's a shorter flashback sequence with Toby Jones. Maybe that's just it, because it's not like we see Toby Jones's character is only used in the flashbacks. He's not used in modern sense because he dies. And so and then you can kind of explain Mads Mikkelsen or whatever, because he just kind of ages himself. But I agree with you, Josh. I think Phoebe Waller-Bridge is the best thing about the film. I think she has great chemistry with Harrison Ford. I wish that the sequence in the middle of the film, when she's trying to sell her half of the dial, and that whole chase sequence, that felt a little long. And then the sequence after that, when we get to Antonio Banderas and we're on this ship, that felt like wasted time, because like Antonio Banderas is barely in this movie. He's useless.
I didn't even know that he was in the movie when I went into it, and I was just watching. He's like, wait a minute, is that Antonio Banderas? I had no idea.
And I just thought that by the end, I was, and it gets to the big sort of reveal of what with the dial and everything. When it gets to that portion of the film, I knew it was coming. It felt very Lucas. That's what I will say about that. That felt very George Lucas, silly shit that Steven Spielberg would say, no, George, we're not doing this kind of stuff, because that's how we got Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, is because he kept saying no to him for all these damn years. And then he's like, but I want to make a movie about the aliens. It's like, fine, George, we'll make it. And I think that's what happened with this, is somebody talked to George Lucas when writing the script, and they got that ending, and it's a weird ending. It's a weird ending. Like,
I'm gonna be honest
sequence,
though,
but it's kind of cool.
I'm not that opposed to what they do at the end of the movie, and which I don't know if we're saying it or not, but
I don't think so. I don't think it's. I mean, I guess we can. I mean, like, the whole thing is about, essentially they get. I mean, it's a dial of destiny, so they end up going back in time, essentially, and it's weird.
It's very weird.
It's very weird, but it's kind of
dug it. I'm not gonna lie,
but it's
I kind of dug it.
It's kind of bold to do it, but it's also the kind of weird that if you didn't like Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, you're not gonna like this kind of weird, because Indy goes back to, like, where does he even go back to? He goes back to
like some ancient time. Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like,
when it was.
And so, but then I don't think that's the baffling choice. There's the choice of, like, he's just like, well, I'm just gonna die here. And I'm like, that's not Indiana. That's not Indiana Jones. Like,
well, it
just
wasn't really
up,
set up is the problem. It's like, I get the idea that they're going for in terms of, like, sort of when you get older and you feel kind of useless and you're wondering what it is that your life has been leading to, and he's obsessed with history. And, like, I get it, like, on the surface. I don't think the movie did a very good job of establishing that from a character perspective. they introduce it but don't really go into it enough, I think, to make that feel justified. And then where we have a really weird resolution to it too, where we're just really pulled out from it very abruptly, and
she
I
just
think
punches him in the face.
Yeah.
And I mean, it'll probably lead to interpretations of well, did he die there? And then this is all a dream at the end, and all that other crap that people try to say all the time. I mean, the one thing I did like in the film, and I know what you guys think, because obviously at the end of Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, Indiana Jones has a family and a son. And I like the what they did with Mutt, basically saying that he died in the war, and that's what drove him and Marion apart. And I kind of like a little bit of that. Like that felt like kind of like natural in the progressions of those characters, and didn't feel like, I didn't think of it as like, oh, they got to get rid of Shia LaBeouf. I thought of it like, oh, that's an interesting choice and resident to the characters,
Well, it's a little bit of both. I mean, because obviously they were like, okay,
we're not bringing him back.
We gotta write this out a little bit. But I do agree with you, Ryan, that I think that the way they did it, and it's a little murky, I think, because we're not quite sure what age Mutt's supposed to be.
I was thinking about that too.
Yeah, because I guess he'd be like, if we're going off of Shia's real age, he'd be close to a 40-year-old private enlisting in the Vietnam War.
Which that character did not seem like somebody who would enlist into the army either.
Right.
You know.
But
but we don't know when he's actually started getting into the army and everything beforehand, and
we don't know. We don't know. They keep it intentionally vague, but I think that Harrison Ford's performance in that scene makes that work.
Yeah.
Right. Because it reminds you, and I will say, one of the things that I did enjoy about this movie was just seeing Ford try again.
He had fun. He looked like he did have fun doing it.
Exactly. And because he is one of our best actors. Sometimes, he can get into this mode where he's like, this is a piece of shit, and I'm gonna,
he can get in that grizzly old geezer kind of, gear.
Just kind of, I don't want to say phone it in, but he's, the material is not worthy of his talents, and he knows it.
Yeah.
Here, I think, because he has such affinity for this character, and he is given stuff to do, he is given some good emotional beats. He does give a real performance, and I did find that to be very touching. And it did make me think about how I had the same thought when I was watching Cry Macho with Clint Eastwood, right? The extraordinary thing about being a movie actor is that you can essentially see a person's entire life unfold in front of you on screen. And we have these emotional attachments to people like Harrison Ford because of the iconic characters that they've played that were a part of our growing up, whether it was Indiana Jones or Han Solo. We have this emotional attachment to them. And so it is touching to see him play this character at the end of his life, because it's almost like you're watching Harrison Ford at the end of his life.
Yeah.
And all that entails.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously it's his favorite character he's ever done. He's getting very emotional during this press tour. I've been watching clips of him, and I think it's the, I don't blame the screenwriters or anyone. I know he wanted to he would keep doing Indiana Jones movies if he had the body and the energy to do it, but he's 80 years old. I think the thing about it is we probably should have more than 5 Indiana Jones movies. But he probably for a long time wanted to do it with Steven, and then he finally they worked with Mangold here, and I don't think I can't blame Mangold for a lot of this stuff. I mean, it really feels like it feels like a Lucasfilm production rather than it feels even like a James Mangold film. And I think we know what a James Mangold movie looks like nowadays.
I think it feels more like a Disney production.
Yeah, it really does. It feels like and that's the thing is it goes back to The Flash or it goes back to this. It's like, if it feels like a studio is making this movie for money and we're just going to throw cameos and we're just going to, because I mean, like literally like the way that the marketing for this movie is, it's like you see Sala, you see Indy going, like, oh, you're also going to see Indy the way you remember him, kids, and you throw in a new character and a bad guy that's we all kind of know, who's a character actor who Mads Mikkelsen I think is he's good as the villain.
He's good, but he's basically doing the version of that character you 100% expect to see at the same time. Like,
true.
He's good, but good in a way that
good enough.
Yeah. I never felt was exciting, really. It's like Mads Mikkelsen plays a Nazi in an Indiana Jones movie. Okay, he basically gave the performance I expected him to give.
But listen, as I said to my former Gold Derby colleague, Daniel Montgomery, Mads Mikkelsen being in the movie is on automatic like 2.5, maybe even 3 stars walking in the door. And
also, his pronunciation of Alabama was the price of admission alone. The way our friend and colleague Sophia Simonello told me.
The other major Irishman defender.
Yes, it's a really silly movie. I can see, I mean, it is doing well with audience reactions. I can see that because there's nothing really coming out next week. So it could make, I wouldn't say the same amount of money, but it could do decently next weekend too, before Mission Impossible comes out and sort of just dominates everything, because that movie just feels like it's about to dominate. And then of course the avalanche that'll be Barbie and Oppenheimer, which is actually a really, really good box office projections for those two movies that we saw this week. What was it? I thought I saw as high as 80 for Barbie, and I saw as high as even 60 for Oppenheimer. Like, it was very optimistic, but still, like, audiences are kind of talking to studios right now with their dollars, and it's actually a good thing. It's something that we've all kind of wanted for a long, long time. But I think that this movie is the definition of fine. It's fine. Like, there's nothing wrong with it. But there's nothing terrible about it. Let's say that there's nothing terrible about it. There's nothing spectacular about it.
Which you would want more from an Indiana Jones movie to be just fine.
You'd want the action sequences
review of this movie, and I do like, we keep talking about James Mangold, and I do feel really kind of bad talking about this movie this way, because the thing I've always admired about him is that he does try. Like, he's a really smart director, and he does like make that extra effort, whether it's in Logan or Ford v Ferrari or 310 to Yuma, to like make something that's better than just passable entertainment. And I do feel bad like lumping this into and I wouldn't lump it in terms of like craft or quality, but these other films that aren't doing as well at the box office, that are just like, they don't even seem to be trying, like, they just kind of, there's such like lazy, by the numbers, like, not even entertainments, just kind of like, you got 3 hours out of your life that you don't want to spend doing something else. Come here, like, I do wish that this was better than fine, because I do see like the effort that's being put into it to try to make it like stand alongside the original trilogy, but it's just impossible to do. And I think Crystal Skull kind of proved that already.
Well, I also think too, you could say a lot about Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. You remember set pieces in that movie.
Good, for better or worse.
For better or for worse. You remember the nuke scene. You remember the opening, which is pretty great. The stuff in the jungle, the aliens, you remember a lot about that movie. And I think I hate saying this, but I love James Mangold. I think he's one of our great modern directors that we have, because he's very trustworthy. I think Ford v Ferrari and Logan are really great movies. Walk the Line is one of the better music biopics that we've had over the last 20, 25 years. He's made some really good movies, but I don't think that this is fair to him, but when you're, like you're saying, Zach, trying to follow Steven Spielberg in a franchise that is his, it's not the same thing as following like George Lucas's prequel trilogies in Star Wars, because like those movies, as much as there's craft behind it and care, a lot of those movies are still trash and people don't like them. And that franchise can withstand that if you're able to tell a good story and not have it be a $300 million budget and put enough care into it. Like those sequel films, that the Star Wars movies did, regardless of how The Rise of Skywalker was, Last Jedi and Force Awakens were massive successes, and both critically and commercially. And they were from directors that I think were better on the page, better storytellers on the page, more than they were just behind the camera. Because Abrams has a hand in that screenplay, and Rian Johnson has a hand in that Last Jedi screenplay big time. Mangold's more of a behind the camera kind of guy, let others do the writing sort of thing, and that's fine. That works for a 4v Ferrari or even a Logan. But for some reason, this just didn't work. There was, I think, again, there was a lot of skepticism going in. So like the box office numbers are now not surprising. Maybe you don't premiere the film at Cannes. You know what I mean? Maybe don't premiere any of these films that have premiered early have not done well. Elemental has not done well. This did not do well. The Flash at CinemaCon did not do well. These expectations in building word of mouth, like you look at Barbie this summer, Barbie hasn't screened for anyone. The anticipation is at an all-time high for that movie. And I also think that younger viewers just don't want to go see an 80-year-old run around in the jungle when they can go see Tom Cruise, who's 50 years old, jump off a cliff in 2 weeks.
He's actually 60 years old, which is even more.
Yeah.
But I was going to say, though, like what, to your point, though, Top Gun Maverick premiered at Cannes.
Yeah.
Right. And was a huge success, but it was also a great movie.
Yeah.
And I think like that's, and again, like I don't want to say that like the effort's not here, because it is there. And like, but a lot of these movies that have been premiering early, trying to get that word of mouth up, they don't have the actual quality of filmmaking to back that up. You know what I mean? Yeah. And it's just like, we'll talk about this in a couple of weeks with
Mission
Impossible, but it's like, you can see the effort is there to like really make this a summer blockbuster entertainment that people are going to want to see multiple times. And
yeah. Well, also too, The Flash, if people want to go, well, Ryan, the Flash reviews were really good at CinemaCon. They changed the ending. They showed different cuts. Like the cut that you finally got to see was not the cut that everybody saw.
And also, maybe I shouldn't say this on mic.
It's also too, like, it just that movie has been an absolute train wreck from the get-go as well too. So, but it is sad, because he should go out on a bang. He should go out on a transcendent note. Like, it's Indiana Jones. It's Harrison Ford. And the last movie that he's going to have is going to just be like oh yeah, they made that, huh? You know what I mean? And kind of like what you were talking about, Zach, Kingdom of the Crystal Skulls ending is a lot better send-off for this character than I think this one is. Yeah. Regardless of that, how you call it. Like the final shot of like Shia picking up the hat and him taking it out of and walking out on the Raiders march. It's kind of great. This is not.
Well, I don't know if I'd go as far as to say that it is great, but it is better. I would agree with that. I think it presents more of a finality, I felt,
Mhm.
than this one did, oddly. We got to the end of this movie, and not that it felt anticlimactic, but it just felt like if this was going to be the final one, it didn't really feel like we are saying goodbye to this version of this character. You know what I mean? It felt like we just ended the movie like it was a normal Indiana Jones film. And that was weird for it to supposedly be his last movie.
And we'll see you in 2 summers with the next one. You know what I mean? That's what it kind of felt like.
Yeah, it was very, very odd. This is a movie that absolutely, to me, feels like it had too many cooks in the kitchen.
Oh, yeah.
It feels like a movie that had a version that it wanted to tell, but didn't get to that because too many people got involved. I am convinced that the Phoebe Waller-Bridge character was originally supposed to be a man and was originally going to be the replacement for Harrison Ford. I always sort of felt like that was what they were going to do. Like they were going to buddy him up with some sidekick who was a younger person, and then they would inherit the title, the name Indiana, basically going forward. It felt very much like that, and somewhere along the way they changed it. And I mean, I like her very much in this movie. As I said, she's my favorite part in it, but that character and her motivations feel weird and not nailed down, as if there are too many people working on that character and it got kind of lost in all of the rewrites.
I mean, there's 4 credited screenwriters on this, and the script has been written and rewritten I don't know how many times in the last 12, 13, how many years it took for them to finally nail it down and go forward with this, because this movie's been in development for a long time, and you can kind of you kind of get the sense that like they were throwing a lot of things at that and trying to see what stuck to it.
I mean, and they had an easy way of continuing the name of Indiana Jones because Mutt's character was Indiana Jones the Third.
Yeah, I mean, as much as we don't like Mutt, it makes the most sense for him to
saying,
be in the movie.
It would have made sense, but of course you can't do that or unless you want to recast the role, which Lucasfilms has been notorious for. If somebody dies or is troubled or whatever, we're just going to either kill them off screen, or we're going to do, we're going to sacrifice story for principles or whatever it is. Cause like they had a completely different screenplay and way they were going to wrap up that Star Wars trilogy. Carrie Fisher dies. And I get that it's Carrie Fisher and I get that it's Princess Leia, but they hadn't had to rework that entire script and it turned out into the gobbledygook that it was. Like you can recast Mutt Williams with whatever person you want it to be.
Yeah, I don't think people would have complained.
No, I think it would have been like the best thing for him, because they were like, because the character of Mutt's not the problem. Some people have a problem with Shia in the role, so they could have just done that.
But it did feel like they just wanted to reset entirely with that character, and I'm not a fan of that. I feel like a lot of studios now, and I blame this on Marvel actually, instead of recasting, they will just get rid of the character completely because we've gotten so used to continuity and we have to associate actor with the role. And it's like they don't trust audiences to recognize that you can just cast somebody else and it's the same character. I find that very annoying.
Well, it's weird too, because Marvel also like recasted a bunch of characters early on, like the Hulk, and
early on they wouldn't do that.
They wouldn't do it. You're probably right, because that's why. I mean, that was the whole controversy with Black Panther. It's like, do they recast for Chadwick Boseman or not? You know what I mean? No, they won't. And but I think that was a big part of the reasons why they struggled with screenplay for such a long time, because of Shia's off-screen issues and everything, and especially over the last couple of years. And now, you get the film that you get. And yes, I do agree with you, Josh. Like, as much as I love Phoebe Waller-Bridge, it feels like she's not even like the last name Jones, so you can't carry that on either. It's very weird. But she's a great addition to the film.
Yes,
and much needed, because she provides an energy that the rest of the film just doesn't have. And then all the other side characters are everybody just wasted. Boy Holbrook, just bad.
I forgot
Like,
he was in the movie.
You forgot he was in it, right? Like, you
It's a shame because
know,
I like Boyd Holbrook, but he's got nothing to do with
he is a
this.
piece of wood in this. He is
Yeah.
wooden. You know what I mean? So,
And bringing John Rice Davies back too felt like, what are we doing? Like, what?
Okay,
we don't need to see this character anymore.
I mean, like, they kind of just doubled down on that character, right? And like that character has been problematic, and
yeah,
it's like, what are you doing?
I mean, it's like they kept him at the minimum amount to be like he's not in it that much, so don't complain profusely. But there's enough in here to just give you your nostalgia kick. But
yeah,
like no.
And then he's like, let's just go get ice cream, and you're like, the hell are you doing here?
Yeah.
like what's going on? So, we all think it's just fine, and that's a sad thing to say about an Indiana Jones movie.
It's sad because like the last point I'll make about this is we don't make action heroes the way that we used to. Like it's like Harrison Ford was just of a different breed in Raiders, you know. And the same thing was the thing that that character had in common with John McClane from Die Hard, or like Ethan Hunt in Mission Impossible. And John Wick is the only other one like this I can think of in the modern era. It's like these guys were not infallible, you know, like they feel more like down to earth, even though they are these like superheroes. And, you know, there's just like, there's a wit and a gravitas and a, you know, dare I say sex appeal to these kinds of,
you can say it,
roughened guys. Yeah. That is missing from a lot of modern day action stars who have to be like, I need to win every fight. I can't even get injured. And, you know, most of my performance you're going to do where I'm in a suit and it's all going to be CGI anyway. So I wish that this was better because I've always appreciated the Harrison Ford mold of action star. And we don't have enough of them these days.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I mean, we'll still have Raiders.
Yeah.
That's all that matters. So that's Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. For everybody here, at least Zach, Josh, and myself, still go see it because we need help in this summer movie draft. Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Actually, you know what? It's the best movie of the year. Go see it.
Exactly.
You don't want to miss it.
Wonderful.
You don't want to miss it.
Best Indiana Jones movie yet. You'll never forget it. Go see it. Bring your whole family. Go multiple times. Yeah.
You know what? Rent out theaters. You know what?
Yeah.
Just see it on a loop.
Spielberg who? No.
Spielberg who? Mangold all the way.
Yeah.
If our teammates Sophia and Kevin were here as well, they would say, you know, see it twice.
Yeah. They're actually, you know what? They're not even here right now for this podcast because they're watching it again. You know what I mean? You know. Same with Eric's team. They felt bad, so they're all watching it too.
Yeah.
Great. So, no, go see it if you want to. Actually, it's like, you know, for the holiday weekend, it's actually not a bad thing to see.
It's decent entertainment. It is. It's just
have a fun time.
Amazing.
Please don't wait for Disney Plus. We don't want that big of a bomb.
Yeah, please don't.
Yeah, because now they're reporting that it might be a $300 million budget, over $300 million. So that's not good. Okay. We are going to transition from talking about a movie that we were mixed on to talking about some of our favorites of the year. We're right into July, beginning of the July. So we're halfway point of the year. We're going to kind of just have a loose conversation. You know, we usually have done top fives in the past, but this feels more like a loose conversation that we can talk about. So Josh, I'm going to start with you. Year so far, general thoughts. What do you think of the year so far? And is there a movie that stands out to you so far that you've seen?
Yeah, I would say that the year so far has been good, not great to me. I've seen some movies that I did really enjoy, but I haven't really seen too many that I have felt at this point are like reigning champs, like my favorite movies of all time. You know, this is really going to impact me at the end of the year. There's been a handful like that, but I think for the most part, the upper echelon of the year has just been like very solid, very enjoyable. Maybe haven't quite found something that I have felt like is exceptional yet. But there are a couple of exceptions to that feeling. And one of the movies I know everybody talks about, and it will get mentioned later. So I actually want to mention something else that is my favorite movie of the year so far, and that is Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. I love this movie so much, and I have really no familiarity with that source material. I went in pretty blind to this, to be completely honest, but I felt like those characters were so endearing. The story of this sort of girl who's growing up and figuring out her life and her family and her body and all these weird things going on, I just found to be so compelling. And the performances are great. Rachel McAdams, I think, has never been better. I think she's amazing in it. Everybody in the movie is great. And I was really moved by it. It really touched me in a very kind of powerful way. And yeah, that movie to me right now is my favorite of the year. I think it's amazing.
I love that movie, Josh. I agree with you. I think that Rachel McAdams right now, if I had a best supporting actress winner, it's her. It's probably maybe arguably the best performance I've seen so far this year, outside of one other performance that I'll talk about here in a minute. I just think of that scene where she's at home and she's just trying to figure out, how to spend her time now, because she's sort of like a stay-at-home mom and she's kind of retired as a painter, and she sees that bird outside the window and she kind of gets everything, and she's right as she's about to paint it, the bird kind of flies away. And it's very heartbreaking. It's such a heartbreaking scene. And I think it's like this coming of age story, and yet it's as much about her at times and her kind of story that it is just about Margaret's. And I think Kathy Bates is great in the film too, but McAdams is incredible in that movie. That is one of the best movies of the year, and one of the biggest surprises of the year, I would say so far, because I remember them trying to like set up screenings for us, and they set up like 4 screenings. And when studios try to push a movie out there for all of our folks out there, when they try to push a movie like that out there, it's like they either really like it or it may not also be a good thing too, because they're like trying to get you to build up as much word of mouth for something that they may be enthusiastic.
Like screenings
yeah,
too.
and you're like, I don't know about that. But it was one that when I saw, I was like, oh my god, this is delightful and wonderful. Zach?
Yeah, I loved it too, actually. And I think like part of the reason why they were pushing it so hard is because, and I hate to say this, but it's like, it's a movie that's geared towards young girls and, like particularly like preteens, because it's all about like, growing up and that era of your life where you're in between childhood and womanhood. And, we still have this sort of mentality about the box office where it's like, it's for teenage boys. Right. And so I think there was this fear, which unfortunately kind of played out in the box office results for this movie, that there wasn't a big audience for it. But I, as like a 33-year-old man, who is uncle to 2 young nieces, I was really touched by this film and found it like incredibly relatable, right? Even though like being a teenage girl is something that I would have no kind of understanding about whatsoever. But I think that this movie is done with so much intelligence and humor and compassion that anybody who sits down and watches it can relate to it. And I think even learn something from it. And I'll also say that like I had this Pavlovian response to the Gracie Films logo popping up.
Yeah.
James O. Brooks is one of my North Stars. And, you talk about like, the kinds of movies that we used to get in theaters, like the Jim Brooks movie of like, it's for adult audiences and it's done with wit and intelligence and humor. That's what this movie is. Like it's a movie that is just, it's about real people going through real situations. And I loved Rachel McAdams in it. I loved Kathy Bates in it. I loved, and I'm blanking on the name of the actress who plays the young girl. Do you guys?
Abby Ryder Fortson.
Thank you, boy. Like, talk about somebody who I want to see in more movies.
Yeah,
and just really gets the complexities of that stage of an adolescent's life. And the director of this, Kelly Fremont Craig, she did this with her first movie that was also produced by James L. Brooks, The Edge of 17, with that wonderful performance by Haley Steinfeld, which again, this movie really does capture that perspective of being an adolescent where everything that's going on in your life at that moment is the most important thing in the entire world, you know? And you don't yet realize, because you're not at that age yet, that you're part of a much bigger world and there are much bigger problems out there. But like right now, the thing that you're going through, just like, trying to find friends, trying to be popular, wanting to kiss a boy for the first time, being afraid of not being mature enough because you see other people maturing faster around you. This movie gets all of that so perfectly.
Yeah. No, and I also, what I love about the film too, besides just the coming of age stuff and everything, is it's a really interesting movie about being that age and questioning oneself, particularly within the world, but also within religion. And I think the movie has really fascinating conversations in that movie about the struggle, internal struggle one finds within religion and how that can tear a family apart, how they could bring them together. I think it's such a mature screenplay of this book that has been around and so vital and important to so many people. And, Judy Blume said that she did not want to give the film rights to this movie for years and years and years. And then, Kelly comes along and makes The Edge of 17, and it blew her away. And, again, it's just nice to see Rachel McAdams back on the big screen, because she is in my opinion, and in my house, she's a movie star, and she has that ability to just wow you as an audience. There's a reason why she was headlining films for so many years and why she has Oscar nomination and things of that. So no, Josh, that's a wonderful film to pick. Zach, I think it's your turn here, my friend. So what have you thought of the film year so far? And do you have a film, Zach, that you like the most out of everything else?
All right, so I'll say I've seen fewer new releases this year than I did last year. Okay. I think part of that is because, for one thing, I haven't gone to any film festivals, folks. So there's still a lot of things that I need to see that are coming up. But, mostly a lot of the new releases that we've had have been kind of, they seem sort of mediocre, and I'm just kind of like, I don't know that I can like give my time and my money to things that, are going to suck my soul dry. And, but there have been these bright spots throughout the year that I've wanted to talk about. And, there's one movie that's come out this year so far that has really spoken to a lot of people, and particularly a lot of people who work for this website. And I wanted to talk about that film a little bit for what it means for me personally. And that movie is Past Lives. I work in two areas of the movie industry. I work both as a journalist and I work both as a filmmaker. So when I watch films, I see them from those two perspectives, right? And it can be incredibly demoralizing working in this business as both a journalist and a filmmaker because it is a because it is a business, right?
Yeah.
Movies are incredibly expensive to make. The people who put up the money for them are adverse to risk, and a lot of the people who are making them are concerned with making a lot of money, right? And you know, you can go through your movie going life wondering, you know, whether or not there is a place for you if you're concerned with film as an art form, film as a means of personal expression. But then every so often you'll see a movie like Past Lives from a first-time director, Celine Song. And I'm reminded of this passage from the great Sidney Lumet's book, Making Movies, which I read a lot because it's got all of the practical knowledge that you could possibly ask for about filmmaking. And in the last chapter of this book, he's talking about the way that the industry works, right? Where it's like it prioritizes making money over everything else. And since we're in a audio medium, if you'll indulge me to just read from a book for a moment. What he says in the last paragraph of this book is, my job is to care about and be responsible for every frame of every movie I make. I know that all over the world, there are young people borrowing from relatives and saving their allowances to buy their first cameras and put together their first student movies, some of them dreaming of becoming famous and making a fortune. But a few are dreaming of finding out what matters to them, of saying to themselves and to anyone who will listen, I care. A few of them want to make good movies. And that's what I thought about when I was watching Past Lives. I don't know what kind of career Celine Song is going to have after this, or even what kinds of movies she wants to make. For all I know, as I'm saying this right now, she could be signing the contract to make Spider-Man 27. But I hope that she never loses the part of herself that made this movie, because that's what people are responding to when they are leaving the theater with this effusive high. They're responding to someone who has made something that is personal and unique to them, that has their point of view, their idiosyncrasies, and expresses something about the world that they come from and how they see the world. And that is incredibly vital to the survival of film as an art form. And for me personally, it is inspiring as both a journalist and a filmmaker to see someone in my general age group continuing to say, I want to make good movies first and foremost.
Yeah, I mean, man, I don't even know how I follow up Zach there. It's my favorite film of the year as well. The other performance I was talking about earlier was Greta Lee's performance, I think, which is absolutely devastating. And she is the conduit for Song's personal, personal story that is being told into this film. And she's having to dance in between these two male characters. One is her childhood friend and her first love, and the other is her husband that she meets. And I think that it's a premise that can sound too good to be true. It can also it could be one that could get silly or get complicated. And honestly, the movie is so honest with these characters that, Zach, we always kind of forget, as we've been talking about this as a group here at AwardsWatch, and others have been talking about it as they've been seeing it. I think we are still forgetting that this is a debut. Mm-hmm. And I think that we are forgetting that we don't see movies like this from debuts. From directors and writers. We see this maybe 2, 3, 4 films in, have this type of control, have this type of understanding, have this type of visual as well as written language throughout throughout their characters and their situations. There's just so many shots in this movie already. I mean, Greta Lee in the back of that taxi. I think of the Skype calls that they have, when she's in college and he's in at his university. I mean, all the stuff in New York. I think of her husband's face when when they walk into the apartment so that they can meet each other for the first time. And his face is that of like every worry that he had the night before, right? Of like, oh my God, like this dude is taller than me. He's kind of like boyish looking, but he's also kind of charming, very nice. And that opening shot of zooming in on the three of them at the bar and the voiceover of the people watching them. I think it's like a perfect start to what you're about to see. The tracking shot there as she's walking him to his Uber, and then as she's walking back into the apartment, it's extremely devastating. It's one of the most devastating shots and sequences of the year. I don't know. I was blown away by it. There are going to be tons of think pieces. There are going to be tons of things. I know for me personally, when I was watching it, I just started to think, I think like we all have, about the people in our lives that have intercepted or that we've sort of interacted with, and how we probably think about them every now and then when maybe we see a movie, or maybe we hear a song, or maybe we somebody tells a story when you're at dinner as a family and you think back to where you were at that time and who was your best friend, or who was your crush, or who was the person that was there for you when you needed them the most. And it's a movie just about it's a memory box. But what if that memory box comes back and hurts you again? And how are you going to be able to piece yourself back together? And I think that it broke my rule this year. And Josh and Zach know my rule. I don't give 5-star or 4-star, however you want to do it, or A+ ratings or whatever, to movies within a given year. And I was just so moved, and I was shook that I was like, there's sometimes you just can't deny it. You see a movie and you're like, no, that's going to break the rule. And it's the first one in like years that has broken the rule, because I like movies to take time before and to earn those ratings. I think that you got to earn it a little bit for me, because people just throw out 5-star ratings and then what does it mean, right? But this one earned it from the first viewing, and I've been dying to see it again, but I also am kind of like, I don't want to, because I don't want to feel like that again. But I just know that it's got this majesty behind it, and I know that makes it sound very pretentious, but it's actually just a very simple film, and it's being put out in theaters or right around the time of Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse and Indiana Jones and all these different movies. And I just think that of the movies from the first half of the year, it is the movie that everybody won't talk about or won't stop talking about. And if they do see it, like it's one of those, like, if you can get it in your area and you can see it, then you'll see it, then you'll know. You know what I mean? And so without question, and I've seen like 88 films this year, through festivals and regular releases already. So and there are a couple of films that I won't talk about today that are going to be coming out soon throughout the year. And I've actually rewatched one of them this past week, Emma Segelman's Bottoms, which is a wonderful comedy, one of the best films of the year. That comes out in August, so it doesn't really qualify. That'll be a second half of the year sort of film. But this is the cream of the crop for the first half of the year for me.
Yeah, it's a great movie. It's not my number one like it is for a lot of others, but I recognize that it is absolutely
How dare you,
one of the best
Josh?
films. I know, which means I hate the movie because it's not my favorite film of the year. That's
right? Isn't that crazy
Yeah.
when you're like now you know how it feels, because like sometimes I'll be like, yeah, that movie's okay, you know what I mean? And then like, but everybody loves it, and then you get, well, then you're just a hater. I'm just joking with Josh. No, you still like it. It's just not.
Yeah, I
It's
really
just
like it. It's really an incredible movie. You know, I have some quibbles with it that doesn't make it my number one, but I absolutely would say that people should see it because it's a great achievement. And I do think that what Song does, both from writing and directing that movie, are just exceptional displays.
Yeah. I will move on from to the movie I want to highlight, or one of the movies I want to highlight here, which is a movie that we actually talked about last week or the week before, and that was Wes Anderson's Asteroid City. I can't stop thinking about this movie. I've been watching behind the scenes of the opening train sequence, where it was, where he just used practical effects, not actually using a giant train, but used like models to do that stuff, and the depth perception of the camera and everything, the characters and everything. We talked about it last week, so if you want to go back and listen to that episode, you can. But I think that movie was like, it just feels like Wes Anderson's becoming, for me at least, more and more confident with these movies in the back half, and these sort of sprawling stories, and having a message behind them, and having some sentimentality about the subject matter. I think it's been really fascinating to see, especially like with French Dispatch and this. They feel very kin to one another. Like that French Dispatch is a movie completely about the writers that inspired him, and this is about the at least through the the written work, and then this is like Zach said, I think last week, Tennessee Williams, but then also too, it feels like a little meta about him, but then also about cavalcade of actors and all these different things. I really love that film. And then the other film that I still really like, and I know I feel like I'm alone on an island, because every time Dan and Nicole talk to me about it, they're like, nobody remembers this movie, and I highly disagree, and that's Ben Affleck's Air. I think that movie, we've seen a lot of movies, and we'll continue to see a lot more movies that come out about commercialization and products, and like there's a Beanie Baby movie coming out, and then there's the one about the GameStop stocks coming out.
Don't forget about Oppenheimer with the nuclear.
That's true. Well, I was going to say also Barbie's coming out. Technically, that's one as well. But then there was Blackberry, and I know everybody's in the camp for Blackberry. But for me, I think that there's what all those movies don't have is an actual director that I think is better than, I wouldn't count Barbie and Oppenheimer, honestly, for that. But I was talking more of these just based on a true, like, how did we get from this point? We even had Tetris this year. So like the Tetrises and the Beanie Babies and all those movies that just kind of feel like these very easy dramas, low budget kind of stories or whatnot that you didn't know actually how it happened, but this is how it really happened. I don't know. There's a sense of earnestness and ease and comfortability, and the cast is incredible in Air. I think Ben Affleck hadn't been behind the camera in years. It's like it was very nice to see him behind and in front of the camera for this movie. Movie moves. Rewatching sequences from it, that movie just moves. Maybe one too many needle drops. Still, I get that, but still a movie that just is very confident, and I think that understands the urgency and the importance of the product. It's not just like a video game or a little toy or some stocks that people got. It's something that changed an entire industry and changed all of sports, to be fair. Because, it was funny. I was looking this past week because the sports moment for me, but my San Antonio Spurs got the number one pick, and he's, Victor Wembanyama, and he's the 7'5", 230-pound center out of France. And all I'm sitting here is thinking about is like, he's saying like, oh, he's going to Oregon to meet with the head of Nike. I'm like, oh, so he's going to get his shoe, because he wouldn't be able to do that if something from this story didn't occur, which is like if Jordan doesn't happen and the Air Jordans don't exist, then that's not a stop on his train. He's probably going to all these other places. And yes, I understand that it's a little weird that, you know, these Gen Z, what is it? Not Gen Zers, but these Ben Affleck
these days.
Yeah, not the kids these days, but the
Gen X.
Gen X. There you go.
Yeah.
I was thinking of a different letter, but the Gen X, you know, directors are making movies about commercialism like this. But I think that there's sort of a romanticism about it that rings true in a lot of sports movies as well. And it's a fascinating story. And so, yeah, I still think it's one of the best of the year. It's not, you know, like, I think it sits at like number 6 or 7 for me. Like it's that and John Wick, you know, which is, I mean, John Wick just rules. I don't know what you guys think. John Wick.
Good movie. I love John Wick. Are you kidding? That whole scene of Keanu on the staircase, like,
oh my God,
some of the best of the year. Like, yeah, like Air's a good movie. I think that you're like the most positive person of this group on it, but I'm very pro Ben Affleck, both as an actor and as a director. And it was nice seeing him do his thing again, which is like, he's a lot like Sidney Pollack was back in the day. Like this guy who's just like really good at doing down the middle mainstream entertainment that's a lot smarter and more well-made than
after Live by Night, he needed a win.
Exactly,
he needed a hit, like not like a commercial hit, like a hit at the back.
A good movie.
He needed just a competent movie, let alone making a good movie. And it plays really well in a theater, I will say. That movie does really well. But does anybody have any other films they wanted to highlight from the first half of the year?
Yeah. There's a couple that I do want to shout out. One is Showing Up.
Oh, Kelly Riker.
Really liked that one too. And what I really appreciated about it was that it did feel like very small scale for sure, but I liked that it felt real and authentic to those characters. And actually something I also really appreciated about it is that the art that you see those characters create, they're not like great masterworks, you know, they're very kind of rough and a bit amateurish. But what I liked about that presentation actually was that it really showed you that this was a movie just about artists being passionate about their own work. And that was really the thing that was the most important thing that you were watching. And I feel like so many other movies would fall back on these people being like, you know, understood great artists and that what they're creating are just, you know, these undeniable masterworks that we would just automatically say are great. And that's not what you're saying here. These are people that are living modestly, but they have so much passion for what they're doing. And I loved that exploration of these characters. And I just found it to be such a warm and inviting analysis, even when it was talking about very prickly individuals at times. And this is another one that I was very moved by. And I thought that it was a really well done effort for sure.
Yeah.
I loved Showing Up. That movie really spoke to me as a person in their 30s who went to art school and is now like continuing to make art while also having to like worry about paying the bills. Like that movie, like that was for me. And I think that Michelle Williams and Kelly Reichardt are such a wonderful team. Like they really bring out the best in each other.
Yeah, Hong Chow is also excellent in that movie too.
Yeah, so
Hong Chow's
good.
great in that movie. She should get her own lead in a Kelly Reichardt film.
Yeah,
she should get more lead roles in general. To be fair,
so good, better than I would even say her Oscar-nominated work from last year. But
I mean, Josh, she's better in the 4 seconds she is in Asteroid City than she is in The Whale. Yeah,
and she's the best thing in The Whale. So that
and that's saying a lot. That movie. Anything else?
I did have a couple of things I wanted to bring up. On the same note as Showing Up, the new Nicole Holofcener movie, You Hurt My Feelings.
Oh, yeah.
It's such a great showcase for Julia Louis-Dreyfus.
Yeah.
An actress who I mean, obviously she's like done all this great TV work, but with both this and her last Hall of Center movie, Enough Said, just proves why she should have had so many leading roles in, like romantic comedies or dramedies, or, like it's such a wonderful little small scale slice of life movie that showcases her unique talent. Obviously, like I think Beau is Afraid. That's a movie that is like, I mean, your opinions of that movie are going to be all over the place. And like we talked about it with Dan, Ryan, and I. I'm still trying to figure out how I feel about that movie, but I'm really glad that it exists and that, Ari Aster got that out of his system, because I think he's one of like our, you talk about people who like are inspiring to me. It's like he's up there. It's like people who view this as personal expression. You mentioned Asteroid City. Another movie by a great filmmaker this year was Master Gardener.
Yeah.
What did you think I was going to say, Ryan?
I knew you were going to say that. I knew you were going to say Master Gardener.
I saw you pointing.
I was like, yep, there it is. There's Papa Schrader.
Yes. I mean, this guy, like, nobody makes movies the way that Paul Schrader does. These films that just like burrow into your psyche and, stay there for long after. And I could see the influence on somebody like Ari Aster, with his films. It's great to see somebody like Schrader continuing to find new ways to express the same themes that he's been working out ever since Taxi Driver.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, I think that there have been some good, you mentioned John Wick. That was a great piece of entertainment. I think Spider-Man, the animated one, which I like, there's
across the Spider-Verse.
There's so many like different subtitles to these movies. I can never remember which one is which for any given.
Yeah.
And it's like both Spider-Mans too. Even the Tom Holland ones, I hate the whole home
concept
thing. Yeah. God, I hate it so much.
I can't wait to see what new home thing they're going to do for the fourth one. It's going to be so damn annoying that like people are going to Spider-Man
back home again.
Yeah. Spider-Man home arrest or something like that, Spider-Man back in the home. You know what I mean? So
or Spider-Man Home Alone. It's in the Disney family now, and that's a Fox movie. Go ahead, bring Joe Pesci back out of retirement.
Yeah, just in all seriousness, like beautifully animated. I wish all superhero movies were of that quality, because then I might actually like them better. I will shout out the last Guardians of the Galaxy movie, which I've been basically done with Marvel for a few years now, but I did enjoy that movie because it felt like an actual movie and not just like something I needed to see in order to see the next thing. So I mean, like I said, I haven't seen a ton from this year, but I'm looking at like my list of 2022 movies. How to Blow Up a Pipeline, really tense, good. Infinity Pool, weird, strange, kind of don't know what to think. Megan, the camp classic of the year.
Yeah. I forgot about Megan.
Nothing will. How could you forget about Megan?
I don't know. I just did. I'm sorry.
Nothing will equal the moment for me when Megan is playing toy soldiers on the piano in the last act of that movie, just in terms of like pure camp. But yeah, I mean, I think that for me, I think about like Past Lives and Asteroid City. Those are kind of like my two favorites of the year so far for different reasons.
I do want to give some shout outs of films that haven't been mentioned. Just a couple here. because I think that they're not bad. The new Evil Dead film, I thought, was just a fun experience to be at that premiere at South by Southwest and be in the theater. I think the movie on second rewatch wasn't as grand, but it was definitely just a fun experience to see that for the first time. I think Creed 3 is really great. Some of the we talk about Michael B. Jordan as a director and the action sequences. I mean, obviously, the boxing sequences and that. Obviously, the antagonist of that film is questionable now and everything. But
biting my tongue.
but I love a lot of the dynamic, especially between Adonis and his daughter in that movie. I think that's some really, really great stuff. And I think supposedly like that's where they're going to head forward with the series. And if that's the case, I cannot wait to see the fourth one. I feel like those movies I feel like they're kind of underrated. Like people are kind of underrated. And that movie was a big hit early in this year. We kind of forget about Creed 3 being a little bit of a box office hit.
Yeah.
I think that, obviously I'm not like I thought, Fast X was just as disposable as anything, but to go see it just for Jason Momoa's performance alone, I wish that the rest of the film was on par with him, but he is having a ball in that movie. And, I think there's talk about another movie that has a really good supporting performance, and that's Peter Pan and Wendy, David Lowery's film that came out. That's on Disney Plus, a movie that should have been on the big screen because of the way it looks. And I felt like it would have been a lot better, and he would have had a little bit more money to make that film look a little bit better and expanded if it wasn't just thrown on a Disney platform. And I got to mention one other movie that nobody's ever going to mention ever again. We're not going to mention this at the end of the year show, so I'm going to mention it now. And it's the stupidest movie of the year. And I got to tell you, I watched it at home. It was like $5.99 and I rented it. So stupid, but just a ball of fun. Russell Crowe's The Pope's Exorcist. I got to tell you, that movie was dumb as hell, but I had a blast with it. I think it is the kind of like you put it on 9:30 on a Friday night and you just are going to just melt away all your continuity and all this other stuff because it's just silly. It's just silly fun stuff. So yeah.
You know what movie I had fun with, come to think of it? And I'm surprised to say this, Dungeons and Dragons.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is a fun movie.
I avoided watching the trailer for that every time it would come on because I was like, oh, I'm not going to see this. This is no way am I going to see the Dungeons and Dragons movie. And then I started seeing some reviews come up from critics that I respect. And I was like, is this a psyop? Like, I don't, is this actually good? And it was fun.
Yeah.
It was. Yeah. I had a fun
really
time.
Like that movie a lot.
Yeah, me too. Renee Jean Page is really good in that. And
yeah,
I mean,
in particular, yes.
I mean, I was just gonna say, not bad to look at. Him and Chris Pine in Every Shot, Please. But
I mean, honestly, the whole cast is hot.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty hot cast.
Yeah. Michelle Rodriguez, very good, very funny in that movie. Like
Hugh Grant,
of her line.
Yeah. Everybody's great. Well, I kind of talked about performances and everything, so and our favorite stuff in there, but are there, now we're at the second half of the year, throw away the movies that you either have already seen or obviously Barbie and Oppenheimer, so let's just throw those out of the way because I feel like obviously we're looking forward to them. It's not like it's not a surprise or anything. Are there films that you both are really looking forward to that you're genuinely curious about? Maybe some stuff that's already premiered at Cannes, maybe movies that we just know are about to come out on the festival circuit.
Josh, you want to go first? I'm like looking at, I'm checking my list here to make sure.
Well, I mean, honestly, I think at this point, the movie that I am most curious about coming up that I really want to see is honestly Poor Things.
All right.
Because that trailer just fascinates me so much, and I am so intrigued by anything Lanthimos does. Even if it's not great, I'm still wildly interested in what he's doing, and it just looks so unique in terms of its visual aesthetics, and I love the cast that he's assembled. And yeah, I think that actually might be my number one most anticipated for the rest of the year.
I do love and miss Emma Stone in movies. And I think that when she worked with Lanthimos on The Favorite, that might have been the best performance she's given, at least for me.
I would say, yeah.
And I have not watched that trailer because I kind of want to go in blind to it, because I just know that it's Yorgos Lanthimos. So of course it's going to be.
I will say the trailer feels like it gives more of a mood than like actual plot details. Okay. I will say that, which might be just more indicative of the movie itself.
Yeah.
Especially with Lanthimos. So, but it just looks so weird, and I'm just fascinated by it.
Yeah, it feels like a Czech situation where he made a big, kind of bold move, more like accessible film, I guess you could say, especially of his filmography with The Favorite.
Accessible within air quotes.
Yeah, in air quotes. No, I get it, but like, but then like
Lanthimos, yeah.
Yes, yeah. And then like he's like, okay, now I can make my weird Frankensteinish sort of horror comedy, thing.
By way of like Jean-Pierre Jeunet.
Yeah, exactly.
It
looks so weird, but yeah. Like I said, can't wait for
the poster alone is one of the best things I've seen this year. Wish they fixed the font, but other than that,
Yeah, I don't know what deal with the devil Yorgos Lanthimos made in order to become like a commercial filmmaker. I guess it's sort of the same deal that David Lynch made back in the early 90s, right? Like,
yeah.
But I can't wait for that movie. It's been a while since he's had one out. So, there's like a lot of things coming out that I'm eagerly anticipating. Obviously, like anytime Martin Scorsese has a new movie, I sort of reserve my number one spot for that, and unless proven otherwise. And this one looks amazing. The other film that came out of Cannes that I can't wait for is Todd Haynes' new film, May December. He's one of my favorite living filmmakers, and he always does something that you wouldn't expect. And it's been so interesting, this phase of his career where he's almost in a weird way become like a director for hire, like just directing like, these movies that are brought to him. And yet he livens them up with his peculiarities and his eccentricities and makes them Todd Haynes movies. And you would never know that it was like something that somebody else originated and then said, let's get the guy who, started his career off with Poison and, and Velvet Goldmine to come and do this. So I can't wait for that. I'm always interested to see what Luca Guadagnino does. And, I think the internet went crazy when the Challengers trailer came out.
Oh, mama.
For good reason. He's one of those guys where you never know what direction he's going to take with each movie. And I'm always so excited with whatever he's got coming up next.
I mean, he's got his next film already wrapped.
Yeah,
so he'll have another one next year.
It's crazy how he goes through these periods of it'll be like 4 years between Suspiria and Bones and All. And then they'll just be like, he'll have like one after another, And
then he'll take a break and then boom, 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 boom. No, yeah. I agree. I'm really looking forward to Ferrari just because the idea of having Michael Mann make a movie at all nowadays just feels like great, because Michael Mann's made some incredible movies, and like after the commercial disaster that was Black Hat, for him to be able to like find the gumption and find the money to make a movie is great. Also, it's got, I think, maybe the greatest living actor we have currently working of his generation, and in Adam Driver. And so I'm very much looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to Priscilla. Because I love it when the estate of Elvis Presley or any artist says we don't like this movie, and yet Priscilla Presley's like, no, I trust her. And I wasn't as big a fan of Elvis last year, and I think a lot of the reasons why is because that character was so underwritten and so underperformed in that movie, and so it'll be nice to have the contrast of that story to it. And I love Sofia Coppola, so it'll be really great to see what she does. Obviously, there's a movie called Dune 2 that's coming out later this year. The second trailer came out, and I think that movie looks incredible. I can't wait to see that on an IMAX screen. I really love the first one, and I'm dying to see the sequel. Zone of Interest. Jonathan Glazer's made a movie, and him alongside If Iron Claw comes out, the Sean Durkin film, and Jeff Nichols' film, the Bike Riders. The Bike Riders. Those are like three directors that I feel like they don't get to make a lot of movies because they are they're not commercial, and they come every 5 or 6 years, it feels like, and they make a movie
10.
for 10 years for if it's Glazer, and then they disappear for a while, and we kind of forget about how great they are, and so I'm dying to see all three of those. And I mean, there's How Do I Live? If we are able to see Miyazaki's new film within this calendar year, that would be great. And then The Killer. David Fincher is making a bloody sort of hitman movie, and I'm all for that. I mean, I love David Fincher. He's one of those directors that I think all three of us and many people listening out there know how great of a director he is. He's made some of our favorite films over the last 25, 30 years. And it's, again, Michael Fassbender and Tilda Swinton in a David Fincher movie. Like, sign me the hell up for that. That sounds incredible. So those are tons of movies that I'm looking forward to. Obviously, Barbie and Oppenheimer, and I know everybody's looking forward to Mission Impossible and stuff like that. Yes, I think we're all in agreements to finally see Killers of the Flower Moon and various other films. But there's a lot of movies that we didn't mention that are still going to be coming out as well, may not be coming out as well. So it's going to be a very busy fall is what we're saying here. And then it's going to be really interesting when we do a fall movie draft to trying to figure out what's going to be profitable at all, because it feels like it's going to be a crazy time at the movies in the back half of the year. So
yeah. I do just want to also mention there's 2 movies coming out in the summer that a lot of people have already seen, but they'll count for, obviously the second half because that's when they're officially released. One that I really want to see is Problemista.
Yes.
The Julio Torres film.
Oh yeah.
Great
That
movie.
trailer makes it look so interesting, and all the talent involved I'm rather big fans of, and I am dying to see that one. And then the other one, I have to mention it. I actually have seen it already.
Oh, I know what this is.
But it officially comes out in August, so it will count. And that is Passages.
Oh,
I can't wait to see it again. If I could have mentioned it more, I would have, obviously, because
I mean, Josh, why would you want to see it again? I mean, there's nothing in
complete mystery. There's nothing in that movie that would make me want to watch it over
no,
and over.
no,
and over again.
you wouldn't want to see it for any particular scene. And
Nope.
you rewind and you play and you rewind.
Nothing about that at all. It's the
when it finally comes on movie,
right.
We're never going to see Josh again.
Yes.
It's just Letterboxd for 2 months straight. It's just Passages, and you're like, how many times did you watch that just yesterday alone? No, it's
all day, every day.
I've seen both films. I actually have reviews up on the website for both films. Passages is a movie I've been constantly thinking about.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously the movie's hot. There's no question about that.
But outside of even those reasons, it's just a fascinating character study that I just was intrigued by all the way through. Like, yes, there is that element, but just even outside of that, I just loved what it was saying about this very complicated, messy relationship with all of those people. Like, they're all kind of terrible in their own ways, but in a real way that makes you interested in how they're going to handle the situation. So, and it was I just think it's a really brilliant film and I love Ira Sachs to begin with.
Yeah.
I think he's a great filmmaker, and this is absolutely one of his better films.
Oh yeah, it's very complicated. And you're right. It's very raw, and it's very honest. And I yeah, it's a movie that I think that the more and more I should have probably rated it higher, because I've been thinking it's lingered. It's a movie that lingers in your brain.
It does.
And Problemista is that movie is super creative and very funny. And Tilda Swinton, my God, is incredible in that movie. I can't wait for you to see that one. I do want to say one, and then I'll kick it over to you, Zach. There's a new Christian Petzold movie coming out I think it's called The Fire, I believe. And anytime Christian Petzold has a movie coming out, I'm take my ticket and I'm going in, because I think he's one of the more underrated directors we have today, because people in our sphere know about Christian Petzold movies, but I don't think the world knows just yet about his. And I feel like one day he's going to get that Oscar nomination for Best Director, and he's going to be the international director in the lineup one of these days. And people are going to be like, oh, all his movies are great. And we're all going to be like, well, we've been here for the last 10 years. So, but his movies are just they're very simple, yet very complex in the messages that he's trying to convey. And he does it all with these really great character dramas that I really aspire to watch, because they aren't like anything else getting made here. So, Zach?
Well, I'm glad you brought up The Zone of Interest earlier, because that was like the other. I was like trying to remember all of the Cannes movies that I was excited to see, and that is definitely one that I'm looking forward to. The other, we should mention the actual Palme d'Or winner.
Yes.
Anatomy of a Fall, which also stars Sandra Hüller. I'm really looking. That was picked up by Neon, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh yeah, because if it's a Palme d'Or winner, Neon's going to take it.
They're snatching it up, and I'm always interested to see whatever the Palme d'Or winner is, right, and whatever else was in competition or screening out of competition at Cannes, because very often it's a really great movie. I am always excited for a new Ridley Scott film. Like, I don't care how it is. Ultimately, I know that I'm going to love it. So I can't wait to see Joaquin Phoenix as Napoleon. Like, that movie, I have such high hopes for it. I have high hopes for every Ridley Scott movie. But I love when he's just like in his crazy, period epic mode.
Yeah.
Like,
well, I mean, he's going to go from that to Gladiator 2, right?
Which I know is, already the most anticipated movie of 2024 because of some behind the scenes footage that dropped with
well, I was just going to say it is because everybody wants to see Paul Mescal. That's all I meant. Yeah. Like Paul Mescal and Pedro Pascal. Yes, please.
Do you think that Ridley Scott directed that workout video with like he was behind the camera operating that?
I mean, I wouldn't put it past him.
No.
I am one last film, if that's okay. I am interested in seeing Emerald Fennell's follow-up to Promising Young Woman, Saltburn. I wasn't the biggest fan. I didn't hate that movie, A Promising Young Woman, like most people did, or wasn't as enthralled with it as others were. But I am very interested in this one, just because that cast is Rosamund Pike and Barry Keoghan and Jacob Elordi. It's a very enticing cast, another very hot cast, and so I'm really interested in seeing that. The Color Purple. I'm interested to see how that adaptation will be, as well as also no one's mentioned this, Maestro. No one's mentioned Maestro, Bradley Cooper's film.
I was just
because we're talking about movies we were looking forward to.
Oh no, Josh.
Oh,
Josh.
I can just hear some of our fellow Not only our listeners, but our Awards Watch contributors just throwing their computer at the wall. And
Like, Josh, what are you saying? Just throwing it.
I mean, I'm sure it'll be fine, but like it's hard for me to not be talking about cynicism. The Bradley Cooper has had so many times at bat, so he's finally giving in and in heavy prosthetic makeup, playing a real person.
Sending those pictures out a year before even
Yeah.
a year plus. We've had those pictures. Yeah,
it's like that's the formula that you got to follow, and I don't know if the subject matter really interests me all that much, but I'll go see it. But it's not high up on my list of what I'm looking forward to.
Hey, it could
I'm
surprise.
just looking
could surprise
forward,
you.
I'm looking forward to the scene where we see Leonard instructing a young Lydia Tarr. That's what I'm.
I mean, come on, we got to see that, right?
We have to have that.
I know that.
Seriousness, though, I am like, I was a big Star Is Born fan from just like him, from Bradley Cooper, not only his performance but his abilities as a filmmaker, and so I do have high hopes for this one, and I'm looking forward to seeing what he does next as a filmmaker.
Yeah, I am looking forward to seeing everyone's reaction to Theater Camp when it finally comes out.
Yeah, I do want to see that,
because that movie is delightful, and you should see that with the biggest crowd possible. Especially, you should also see it with any of your friends or fellow critics that inspired to musical theater, because it's really accurate. That's what I will say. And if you've ever been a part behind the scenes or on stage with musical theater, or just theater in general, it's not like a damning criticism, but it's one that you will feel seen. And it's a really funny movie that I highly recommend. Also Joyride too. I know that people are starting to see that in advanced screenings, but Joyride, that's another fun comedy. There's a lot of fun comedies out there to go see as well. So, all right. Well, that's it. That's going to do it for this week's episode. So Josh Parham, can you tell everybody out there where they can find you and all your work?
Yeah, well, I don't know. Can you find me on Twitter? That's a good question right now.
I mean, you can limitedly find you on Twitter.
Yeah,
right?
If you can, you could find me there. Also on Letterboxd at JR Parham. And you can also find my work over on Next Best Picture and at AwardsWatch.
I feel like you're gonna have to get up with the Instagram or
we'll
the
cross
what is
that
it,
bridge when we get there.
the Biscay thing or whatever that other thing is, that new social media platform that everybody's seeming to get caught up on, or whatever.
Everybody's looking for an alternative to get off this sinking ship.
Not everyone's as lucky as me to have Josh Parham's phone number and be able to text him whenever I want. So we got to be able to find a way to talk to the people, Josh. We got to.
I thought you were about to dox him on that.
Well, I was not. No, I'm not going to say his area code is no, but I mean, for the meantime, I feel like every now and then we start thinking about that if we're going to get to this point with Twitter, and then like it gets safe for like a couple weeks. And
I know.
And then he didn't get his lunch on time, so then he starts coming up with new other things. So yeah, for now you can follow all of us on Twitter, but listen to where Josh does and just follow all of his work too, because he's an amazing writer. Zach Laws, where can we find you on the internet?
If you want to waste one of your 600 post applications on me, you can find me on Twitter at Zach Laws. I'm also on Letterboxd and Instagram and Facebook at Zach Laws as well. And you can find my work at AwardsWatch, where we forgot to mention this. I did write about the Indiana Jones franchise, ranking the 5 films. I guess you can guess by now where I would have ranked the most recent one. So head over to read that article.
It was shocking that it was number 1. It was. It really was.
Well, what can I say?
Like,
I'm a contrarian.
What did you say about Raiders?
Yeah.
Yeah. You can also check out Zach's OnlyFans that'll be established next week. So
yeah, when Twitter is finally done and
exactly.
I have to reach the people in a different way.
Yes. You can find, oh my God, you can find me on Twitter as well as Instagram and Letterboxd at Ryan McQuade 77. I'm sure that we'll have different ways of finding us on social media soon. If not, we'll be staying on Twitter, whatever. I don't even know what it all means. But until then, find me at Ryan McQuade 77. You can find all my work here at awardswatch.com as well as other places on the internet like the playlist and FilmSpeak and all those other places. I don't even know, what are we doing next week, guys? You have the calendars in front of you? It's
wait, I do actually.
We are talking next week our final Emmy nomination predictions between myself, Eric, and Tyler. So everybody is going to be taking the week off. They'll be all seeing Indiana Jones. So that's Josh and Zach's job to see it 5 or 6 times in theaters to inflate the box office. But we'll be doing Emmy nomination predictions next week. So until then, we will see you all next time.